Hi and welcome to Where Do We Begin podcast. My name is Melissa Wu and I'm a 4-time Olympian and an Olympic silver and bronze medalist.
Lockie, we're back. How does it feel?
Mate, back like a bad rash, Harps, and I could not be more excited for today's guest.
Oh, it is so good, and a special episode as well, a bit of a milestone for us. Episode number 50. We've had 100 plus of kind of all kinds of episodes, but 50th interview episode. It's super exciting, and we could not have asked for a more exciting guest to join us on this episode number 50. A massive name in Australian sport, of course, Olympic diver just coming off the Tokyo 2020 Games. Melissa Wu, how are you, Mel?
I'm good, thanks. How are you guys?
Oh, absolutely splendid. Another beautiful day in lockdown. And now with the first question, we always like to go for a bit of a curly one. And it's just basically explain the sports. And, you know, I'm not an expert, although I might look like a diving expert due to my physique. But I get the basic principles. You jump into the pool. But tell us a little bit more about the scoring system. You know, I understand that you have 5 dives. Can you have all the 5 same dives, like 5 quadruple backflips, or do you have to have different ones?
Yeah, good question to start. So diving, the men and the women do a different amount of dives. So the women compete 5 dives and the men compete 6. And on platform, which is the event that I do, there's only like 6 different directions that you can actually do. So it's front, back, inward, reverse, handstand, and twist. So for anyone that knows what they are out there. So basically the men have to cover all groups on platform and the women get to pick whichever group they don't like to leave off. And then for springboard, you do the same amount of dives, but for men, because there's only 5 groups on springboard because you don't do a handstand, the men will repeat a direction dive. And then the women just have to cover all 5 dives. So there's actually like not that many different variations of dives you can do. You can't like really make up your own or anything like that, like in some other sports. There's really only like 6 or 5 different directions depending on springboard or platform. And then you basically either do like 2.5 or 3.5 for women or 3.5 or 4.5 for men. So most of the time, a lot of the athletes in the comps will actually have similar lists of dives. And the only thing that you can then kind of be a little bit strategic on is the order that you do your dives. But it doesn't really help because at the end of the day, you still have to compete them all. But I guess in terms of like pressure or putting pressure on other divers or which order you feel more comfortable, that's probably the only sort of part where you have a little bit more control over. But you do have to submit your dives 24 hours before the event. So it's not like you can change it in the middle of the event or anything.
I can tell you, if there was a diving movie in Hollywood, I'm sure that they do this thing where the person changes their dive last minute and it's an amazing thing. Surprise the opposition, but it's not like that, is it, Harps?
It's not as exciting as it.
But you mentioned just before, like the women having less dives than the men. I know in tennis, we were talking about tennis off air, women have less sets than men in the Grand Slams, and there's a bit of controversy around that. Some people want that changed. Same for the diving community. Do people want a level playing field for both genders?
I haven't really heard too much discussion on that. I don't think it's a bad thing, like if women were to do that. But yeah, I think that maybe they made it that way for a reason because there hasn't really been much kind of opinion on that around the world, so maybe everyone's happy to just leave it the way it is.
Harper's showing his diving knowledge there, and obviously so you perform in the 10-metre platform. Can you tell us a little bit about the decision to perform in the platform compared to the springboard and why you decided to go on the platform? Because I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be jumping off of something 10 metres high like that into water.
Yeah, I totally can agree with what you're saying there. And actually, I guess you don't really make it, like you don't really decide, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, it comes down to what you're good at. So if I was good at springboard, I would 100% stick to springboard. But I think because I was always so small when I was younger, and obviously you need a bit of weight behind you, a lot more muscle mass to be able to move the board and get the most out of it. So I got good at platform when I was younger, and then because I just kept traveling and competing and preparing for events on platform, I then trained even less on springboard. So I just didn't get time to commit to it and just in general wasn't as good at springboard. So I'm happy to stick to platform because it comes a lot more naturally to me.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll be shitting myself either way, to be honest. But with kind of diving in general, it's not like the most high-profile sport in Australia, not super mainstream like your Aussie rules or rugby league or anything like that. But you're probably one of the most famous divers in Australia, if not the most famous diver. So, bit of a weird question, but do you, like, as the kind of face of diving in Australia at the moment, do you get recognised in the street much? Get recognised in the street at all?
Occasionally, not too often. Like you said, it's a pretty small sport. There's not a lot of, it's not really out there, especially between Olympic cycles. It goes a bit quiet for us in terms of exposure. But yeah, every now and then I get noticed on the street.
Have you got like a particularly funny story from someone recognising you in the street from over the years?
Nothing in particular, but I think because I got a bit more exposure when I was younger. I think in general people just think that I'm still like a little girl, and they are surprised that I've like grown as I've aged, like everybody else does. So probably that's the only thing. They still think I'm like really young, but I'm definitely not anymore.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mel, you've been living rent-free on my For You page, so I might be have to charge you rent on the old TikTok app. We love your content on there, so I'm sure plenty of people will recognise you on your strong social media presence. And we touched on it a little bit before about the 10-metre platform. Just what is the courage it takes to jump off that and do like flips and do these crazy dives? Because I think the courage that's required for divers, because you see them and you think, wow, like the fact that they can do that is like those flips, it's so beautiful. But also you forget about the amount of courage that it would actually take to just do that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So diving, you got to make it look as graceful as possible, as easy as possible. But a lot of people don't realize that there's like a lot of pain and tears that go into getting to that point. And definitely every diver, especially at the Olympic level, would have had a million wipeouts, a million smacks on the water throughout their career. It's pretty much par for the course in diving. But like you said, it's really important that you have that courage. And sometimes the courage is going in the first place, just being able to get off the board and do the dive. Or sometimes it is after you've had a bad experience, being able to get back up and try again, even though you're really scared. And I think it's a skill that it develops over time. Everybody's always scared in diving. You don't really just I don't know many people that are just not scared, but I think it comes down to having a good rapport with your coach and preparing as well as you can for the dive and being able to kind of just forget about the fear and just focus more on the technique and execute that. Because if you think about the fear and you let that consume you, then it's really, really scary.
Well, what's the scariest dive for you?
I think I'm not really that scared of my dives anymore, but sometimes, like as I got older and I got more injured, sometimes the fear for me on dives would not be about the actual dive, but I knew that I was going to like make an injury worse, or I was scared of like the physical repercussions of like hitting the water. Even if I hit the water fine, like it was a good dive. I think for me, it was interesting when I was younger, the fear was really, I was just scared. But when I got older, I was like, oh no, my body is going to break. I'm really scared about that. And it was a different kind of fear.
Yeah. So talking about that fear, so I think it's interesting. So obviously you have your 5-set dives, and you got described as a veteran before, which at 29 years of age, I don't think you're a veteran, even though you have been to 4 Olympics. But I guess particularly when you were starting, how did you sort of try those hard dives? How did you build up to practicing them, build up that confidence to eventually going and doing it in the pool and competing with it at events?
So 50% of our training is actually doing Dryland training. So every afternoon we spend in the pool practicing our dives, but then we also do morning sessions every morning, and they're split up. Some of them are gym sessions where we just do weights, and then other sessions are in like a gymnastic center where we basically like somersault on trampolines and into foam pits and on crash mats. And when I was younger, we did a lot of harness work as well. So you basically just try and replicate the dives as much as you can, so you have the feeling of it before you go in the pool and do it. And you'll do like hours and weeks and months of repetitions to build the feeling. And then it never quite mimics it exactly, but you can just basically prepare as well as you can before you then go and do it in the water.
Yeah, so like in the build up to these Olympics, were you still spending kind of 50-50 in and out of the water?
Yeah, for sure. So even though I've been doing like the same dive list for many, many years, Dryland is still a really big part of our training. And even though we use Dryland as a tool to learn new dives and to prepare, even if you already have the feeling of dives, it's a really good way to build a lot of repetition. So for example, like on platform, and I mentioned like injuries before, and generally for platform dives, you can't do like heaps and heaps of repetitions on 10 meter because your body just won't be able to take that, and you'll end up going backwards instead of continuing to move forwards. So the way that you can build repetition in practicing your takeoffs or certain elements of the dive is you can break it down in Dryland and just focus on like specific parts of it, and then just get your reps in that way, so that when you get into the pool, you can basically just convert all the hard work that you've done, and you don't have to kill your body trying to do it in the pool.
Yeah, so something that I'm interested in that, like, I guess looking at what you've put up on social media is the importance of core work in diving. Can you explain sort of how that helps and translates into the finished product?
Yeah, for sure. So core is really important for a number of reasons in diving. So, core is important to, firstly, like when you create rotation, you've got to be able to get into small positions really quickly. So your core helps with that. And then when you're rotating in the air, you're falling and you're somersaulting. So it's really hard to kind of fight that gravity and make a small shape. And I find, for me personally, when I dive, the thing that works the most when I try and get into a small shape in the air is my core. And you can use your arms and everything else to kind of help you, but basically core does the bulk of the work. And then when you kick out and you stop the rotation, obviously, again, fighting gravity, you have to stop. You've been rotating here, so you have to be able to stop that rotation really quickly. That uses your core. And then when you hit the water as well, you got to hold your line. You got to not get injured when you hit the water and try and make as little splash as possible. So basically, you need your core the whole way through the dive. So that's probably the number one muscle group that we train. That and legs probably are the two main ones.
Yeah, unreal. Thanks for covering that for us, Mel. I feel like I'm a diving expert now. And so one last thing, which I absolutely love, is that you're probably the only 29-year-old I know that has a trampoline in her backyard. I absolutely love that.
I love it. I'm like still a kid. I love flipping around and doing all that stuff. It's so fun.
So, like, you must have had a bit of not must have, but I imagine a few divers had a bit of a background in kind of gymnastics, that kind of thing, yeah?
Yeah, most do actually. I'm probably like one of the only ones that didn't really have much of a background. I actually started diving because my sister was quite a good swimmer when she was younger, and she used to race a lot at Sydney Olympic Park, and that's where I first saw the divers at the other end of the pool. And I did a bit of gym though, and I loved like flipping around the house. So I was always really drawn to that stuff. But most of the kids who make it like an elite level, they're kind of like talent scouted from a young age, and they come from more acrobatic sports like your gymnastics or trampolining or tumbling and things like that.
Yeah, all right, cool. And I've heard you own like a kind of gym business with your brother. Is it called Hardcore? And does that help with your training methods as well? How does that tie into your training methods?
Yeah, it does actually. So it's a gym that we run from home, and it's predominantly for weightlifting. So we do my brother and my sister coach for that business, and they do like PTs, but then they also have a weightlifting club. So it's actually the biggest weightlifting club in New South Wales at the moment, which is really cool. And basically I don't do the coaching because I'm not a weightlifter, but I dabble in weightlifting a little bit, and my brother and sister teach me a bit of stuff, and it's been really cool I think like the thing that I really learned along the way is that you just become so specialized with your sport. And I've been diving now for like 20 years or something ridiculous. So in some ways I'm very flexible and I've got good mobility, but in other ways, muscle groups I don't use, I'm the opposite. So weightlifting kind of helped me just round that out a bit better and avoid that over specialization. And it actually corrected some of my injuries because they just came about from kind of over specialization. So yeah, I kind of dabble a bit here and there in weightlifting, and then I basically mentor the younger kids and run like the education component of the youth scholarship program that we run there.
Yeah, unreal. And sounds like Mel's been diving longer than since you've been born. So bit of experience here, mate. So I hope you listen up. And I just don't, how do you find the time? Like, you're performing at an elite level. I've seen that you're now an ambassador for GoDaddy. You've got your own activewear label. Like you said, you're involved in the gym. You've got 1,000,001 things. How the hell do you fit it in? I just don't get it. Do you have a 25-hour day? Like
my schedule is very busy. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm very busy, and I just have to basically stay really organized. And I think the thing that I struggle with the most is just obviously when you're an athlete, you have to put 100% into that. So you've got to always, that's my number one priority is always me as an athlete. But then all the other hours outside of that, I'm kind of go, and I'm kind of busy doing stuff. And I think the thing I struggle with then is that I don't actually get time to fit like work in, if you know what I mean. Like, it's just like part of the work is the coaching and all that, but then if you have to write programs or you have to do other things, that kind of has to get crammed in at nighttime or on weekends. And I just find that I do like a bit of time to just rest and recover. And I think that's the hardest thing, is that just then that turnaround time of having to get up, wake up and do it all again the next day and put the time into diving. But I think for me, the key is just being organized and kind of having not just like a daily plan, but like a weekly plan and trying to see where things will fit. And it's like a puzzle. Everything kind of fits in nicely. And I just have to be really careful with how I like spread my time, because I don't have much spare time.
So could you like just live off what you make from diving, or are these kind of other side things necessary for divers in Australia?
I could, and I did for a long time. So I didn't really start my businesses or things like that until after the last Olympics in Rio 2016. And I think just, being to a few Olympics, you never know, when things could happen and you might not be able to dive anymore. So I just wanted to really get prepared for life after diving. And from a lot of the research and the advice that we're given from previous athletes and from the AOC, they basically say it's really good to set your life up for after sport while you're still an athlete, instead of trying to then do it afterwards. So I basically just try and set everything up for outside diving, and it is tough to manage, but also it does give me a really nice kind of life balance.
Yeah, definitely. I think balance is so important for all athletes. And I'll tell you what, I've seen signature basketball shoes, I've seen signature football shoes, but in my research of you, Mel, I found that you have your own signature air mat. Now, I was going to find out what an air mat was, but I thought I'd find from the lady herself, what the hell is an air mat and how do you have a signature one?
So yeah, basically I'm an ambassador for Little Gym Shop. So they make gymnastics equipment that you can use at home, which is perfect for lockdown. And because diving is very similar to gymnastics in that Dryland component that I mentioned, and divers, obviously, we don't have pools and springboards at home that we can use to train. So then in lockdown, all of our training is basically just Dryland training, and having things like these air floors are really helpful. You can somersault on them or flip on them. You can do all your core work, your conditioning, and it just makes it more fun. So they're a great company, Little Gym Shop. If anyone's looking for something to use at home for some training, I would definitely recommend their air floors. They're great, and it's good for the whole family. Like, kids love them, and like I said, I'm a big kid, so I love training on those kind of things.
Having your own signature air floors now, but started fair amount of time ago, almost 2 decades ago. Com Games 2006. People would have heard this a million times, but I still can't wrap my head around this. 13 years old at the 2006 Commonwealth Games. Can you just talk me through that experience of being with all these older people, being 13 years old at the Melbourne Commonwealth Games in 2006?
I know, Harp. So I didn't even have my Bunsen burner license at 13, and Mel's performing at the Commonwealth Games.
I didn't have my pen.
Neither did I, don't worry. Yeah, me neither. Everything was out of order for me. It was a pretty amazing experience. I often reflect on that time because it was a bit crazy, but I think when you're young, you just kind of take it all in your stride, and I didn't really feel any pressure or anything because I was just young, unknown, and there wasn't any expectation on me, not from like the general Australian public or the media. So it was just a really cool experience, and I think it was the perfect comp to do like before an Olympic Games, because it's run really similar, that it's a games event, and it's basically the same thing but just without the that even more pressure of being an Olympics. And yeah, it was cool. I got a lot of sort of media attention around that time, and I just kind of loved it. I loved that whole experience and all the opportunities that came along with it, and being able to get qualify and be able to wear the green and gold tracksuit and represent Australia for the first time at the senior comp was just an incredible feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I certainly know you got a lot of media attention at the time, because to be honest, I was 7 at the time. We had to do a project on a Commonwealth Games athlete, and I chose you because I actually thought it was so cool that somebody just a few years older than me was like at the game. So yeah, big inspiration of mine.
That's awesome.
Big inspiration of mine at the time. So and I guess, well, how do you go about being selected to the games? Like, how, as a 13-year-old, how do you go through the pathways of being a junior member to the top level in the senior team?
So in diving at the time, I was pretty lucky. I got selected to go into this squad where they only took about 3 of us to begin with. And it was basically the first time that they were having like this junior squad and trialing that. And we got to go into this elite squad basically like when the AIS was still a thing in diving. That's all kind of what's the word? Like, it's all now in state programs rather than being in one national program now. But that was when there was just basically a national program for diving. And I got to go into this squad and train with Olympians who had literally just come back from the Athens Games, and they'd won a bunch of medals. And it was I think it was the most successful games that that diving had. And that was just such an incredible opportunity for me. And there, I basically just got to train alongside these Olympians and see what they did and see what made them successful athletes. And I tried to just follow, what they did and do the same things so that I would be successful. And that was such a great experience. It was also a little bit stressful because you had to kind of maintain your place in that squad. So there was that pressure of always having that fear that you were going to be kicked out and that you weren't meeting the standards. So I think then for me, when to go and make that Commonwealth Games at 13, part of it was, this amazing experience and, it was all new and exciting. But the other part, I did feel a bit of pressure to, I knew I had to make the games to kind of keep my place in the squad. And I definitely, it was kind of both sides. It's incredible experience, but at the same time, I knew that I had to go and perform, and I had certain standards I had to meet.
Yeah, that's unreal. I couldn't, I don't know about you, Haas, I couldn't deal with those stresses at the age of 22, let alone as a 13, 12-year-old. So, but you didn't just make the squad. You won a silver medal, which is unbelievable. And I think it's every kid's dream to rock up to school the next week with an amazing achievement, Olympic gold, Commonwealth Games medal. I mean, what was it like being a Commonwealth Games silver medalist while you're still taking year 8 math?
It was pretty cool. Yeah, my school was really supportive, and that was awesome to be able to come back, and they were all so excited for me, and they were all supporting me. And I think because it was a home games too, that was really special, even though it was in Melbourne, so not where I was from. Just having that home support, I think home games are the best. And I was lucky enough that I got to do Gold Coast as well in 2018. And from the 4 Commonwealth Games I did, there was no comparison between the home games and the ones away. So I think, just having all that support from my school when I was younger and doing that first games at home was, I think, a great way to start my career.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 2018 Com Games in Gold Coast there, and I've heard you say that it was tricky to dive there because of the kind of weather conditions. Is that right? That's never something that I thought about for diving.
Yeah, it was. It was scary, actually. I said before I wasn't scared of my dives, but that pool, I was scared of everything. I was scared to walk up the stairs. I was scared to stand on the end of the platform. I was scared to go. And I think everyone was. We basically, that comp, I think that comp for me was one of the most, I guess, if someone said, oh, what's, the comp in your career that means the most to you, that comp would probably be it, because we were training there for 2 years beforehand to try and get used to the conditions. And every time we went there or had a comp there, I'm not joking, someone went to the ER, the hospital. Someone had to go to hospital every single time. And we were there, and it just does crazy things to that pool. It's basically right on the water, and it's really windy, crazy windy. And it was just scary.
So is it
but it was okay. When we were in...
You go.
Oh, when we competed there, though, in April at the Com Games, the weather was much better. So we'd always been going there in October, November, and the weather was a lot worse. And then when we went to Com Games, it was actually a lot better. But I just think the journey of getting there was it was quite scary for me, that pool.
Yeah. So is it an outdoor pool?
Yeah, it's an outdoor pool, yeah. So we don't often, every now and then we'll have comps in outdoor pools, but most of our comps are indoors, and we train indoors. I used to dive at the Gold Coast actually when I was really young. So before I got into that squad where I trained with the older Olympians, I was actually on the Gold Coast before that. But I didn't dive off the 10 meter or anything. I only dived off 5 meter and did very basic dives because I wasn't very good before when I was younger.
Yeah, and I've heard, just taking it back to kind of first Commonwealth Games kind of time period, just after that, is it right that you were homeschooled after that from after year 9-ish? Is that right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. So I went to Commonwealth Games, but then after that was kind of the start of my career. And then after that, I was doing a lot of international travel, and we used to have events where it was a World Series where it used to kind of go back to back for up to a month. At a time, and it was just and then other times it was just kind of come and go. So it made it really difficult for me. My school was really, really supportive, and I really appreciated that. But I think it just there's the school model just didn't fit with the travel model, and And even when I went away, it was really hard. Like when you train at home, you usually do like early morning and afternoon, and then you go to school during the day. Whereas when you go and travel for a comp, even the training days, your training times are all different, and it basically gets spread out across the whole day. So you have very little time to fit in study and that kind of thing. So it just was really difficult to juggle both. So I ended up moving to homeschooling because I've always been pretty motivated, and it was just more about like the time and the scheduling that was difficult for me. So yeah, that was a lot easier for me. But just generally though, I struggled a bit with school. I didn't struggle with the work. I don't know. I found like uni was a bit more flexible, and it was just different. But school, I think if you do it as a normal person, it's probably better. But I missed out on a lot of social time and stuff like that. School was a bit of a hard time for me.
Yeah, I could imagine it'd be intimidating for the other students speaking to a Commonwealth medalist and an Olympic medalist.
No, I don't think so. I was so much smaller than them. I was just like this little, like, nothing intimidating about me.
But I can imagine, like, not just for diving, but for any sport. But I've heard with diving, like being in it at such a young age, it can be a bit of a kind of toxic culture, I've heard, and maybe even like a bit of bullying at certain levels when one person's like really young, the rest are way older. Is that like right? Is that your experience?
That was my experience. I don't think that there's like necessarily one sort of culture around it. I just think in general, everyone has a bit of a different experience. And for me, when I came through, I was basically the only super young one on the team with a group of older athletes. And so I did struggle a bit to kind of fit in with that squad. And I think too, even as we mentioned before, when I was younger, there was quite a bit of sort of media hype because I was young, but I was really tiny as well. I think that's why they're so interested. And that's something I struggle with. But I think as I got older, our team changed, and I think our team culture became really different. And as someone now who's the oldest on the team, I really don't like bullying or treating younger athletes in any way other than the way they should be treated. So I definitely don't do it, and I try and support the team as much as possible and step in if I see any of that sort of stuff happening. But I think too now, it was just a different culture before. Like I mentioned, we had that one national program, and it was just, I think part of the thing was just the culture that the management and administration created among the team, whereas now it's all filtered out into state programs, and it's just a better model, I think, for mental health in general.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to hear that you're setting the tone. And classic Harper, the journalist student, looking for the headline. Mel Wu labels diving culture as toxic. Watch him, Mel. Watch him. I know he looks like he's trustworthy, but I'd watch him. And So following on from those Com Games, 2008 Olympics, I mean, how special was it, the fact that not only were you competing at your first Olympics, but your family got to go and watch? You had your grandpa who was living in China. He got to watch you dive live for the first time at a home Olympic Games for him in an Olympic final, and you ended up winning a medal. That must have been so special. Yeah,
it was so amazing. So actually my family's Chinese, but my grandpa lives in Sydney as well. But just he might have seen me dive a couple of times, like as a younger athlete, but never like at that level. And because I started diving when I was in Sydney, but then I lived in Brisbane for quite a few years. So he didn't see me dive for quite a few years. And I think the fact that he went all the way over there to watch me, and with my dad and my sister Kirsten, I think that was really special as well, and being able to win the medal there. And I think there's just something about your first games that's always just, it's the thing you've been chasing your whole life to be able to make that team and to be able to go there and then have my family there as well. It was just really cool.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to check my source next time, because it said that your grandpa lived in China. So I'm not happy. I'm not happy with my sources.
Oh, you can't trust the media.
Kind of like looking through the stats and stuff and watching the diving in these Olympics just gone, it's like China just dominates it completely. And in Beijing, I assume it would have been the same. So are they always just expected to win? Are they always the favourites?
In diving, they're always the favourites. Yeah, they have been strong for a very long time, and they just keep getting better and better. They are very hard for the rest of the world to catch, but it's good. I think it's good to have that high benchmark for people to continue to strive towards, and it is good to see, especially in the men's events. There's always athletes putting a bit more pressure on them, which is great to see. So hopefully, we can keep evolving in the sport and try and bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah, we probably should have touched on this a bit earlier, but you've had a lot of success in the synchronized events. What do you attribute that to? So in Com Games, you won a silver. You won silver at these Olympics. You've won a couple of other gold medals in this event. Why do you think you had so much success in synchronized diving?
So I think I definitely had a lot of success early on in my career in synchro, and I think that a big part of that came down to, like I mentioned, we had that national program where everybody had to come to one place and train together. So you had Australia's top athletes in the one place, and you got to basically then have the best athletes kind of pushing each other to get better and better. And then when you pair those athletes together and you can train together every day, that makes a huge difference in being able to compete against teams who are doing the same overseas. They're training together for years and years and building these really strong teams. And that was probably the downside of then decentralizing that program. It was good in terms, there were many benefits, for the mental health of the athletes and the structure of that program. But it meant that everybody then went into and diving's not a huge sport. So that, even though we had everyone in the national program, by the time everyone, everyone went to their states, there wasn't many like in each state. So you had to pair with people in other states. And so I think that's part of the reason why we didn't do as well in synchro, because you couldn't train together as frequently and you had to go on teams and then only prepare a few days before the comp, and that really affected things.
How do they do the pairings? Like, do they kind of try to make the personalities of each person in the pair kind of complement each other, or is it they just put the best two together?
Or draw your name out of the hat, like?
It's basically, I think it's more like, it's definitely like performance is the number one thing in diving. So when you pick a pair, you definitely pick them based on the level of the individual divers, firstly, I think. And then secondly, everyone has their kind of own little style of diving, but you also pick pairs that are going to be the most compatible. So if you can, you want to pick like your top two divers and then hope that they're the most compatible. If not, you maybe would choose a team that's a bit more compatible, either in height or in, some people are a bit more fast twitch, some people are a little bit slower in when they create power for their dives. And then I think in general, we don't have a huge pool to draw from in Australia. So you basically then build the rapport and you build that personality-wise, the two people going together. But I think definitely we select more on performance to find a good compatible team.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting. And so like we said, so you had a lot of success in the synchronized diving. And so by the time before you turned 17, you'd medaled at every major sporting event, Olympics, World Champs, Com Games. What was it like to have accomplished so much at a young age? And do you think that could have almost been a bad thing in the fact that you'd already achieved more than what a lot of people would in their entire careers?
I don't think it was a bad thing. I think for me, like I always, like I mentioned, there was a lot of pressure being in that program, and I always felt that there was a lot of pressure to constantly strive for better performances. And so I never really, I guess, stopped to think about what I'd already done. I was just always focused on the next thing. And I think that actually helped in terms of, like, in diving, you actually have quite a few bad performances and it takes a long time to build consistency. So as a younger athlete, I think I was a better diver, but I was definitely a lot more inconsistent. So I had a lot of bad performances that I had to quickly bounce back from and learn to be resilient. And I think because I was always focused on the next thing, it helped me bounce back more quickly. So I think I never, it's like cool to look back on now at this point in time, but I think though having that success when I was younger it kind of helped build my confidence and realize, okay, I'm at this high standard. I can do well. I just have to kind of back myself and believe in myself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you took it better than Harps and I. I'm sure if Harps and I had achieved that at 17, we'd refuse to buy a drink at any bar in Australia. I'd be dropping my name everywhere. And it's interesting that you touched on that consistency, because I think that I'm not a diving expert, but you've been super consistent in your Olympic results. In 2012 coming fourth, 2016 you came fifth. You didn't get the medals, but it was still, you dive really consistently to make the final. Is that something that you think's been really beneficial? And what was it like also missing out on those medals at those games?
It was pretty tough missing out on medals at the games. In London when I came fourth, that was quite close, and I think I wasn't where I was at in my career, I think I definitely wasn't at my peak diving, and I still dived, like you mentioned, like relatively consistently, but I knew I could have gotten in the medals. I just needed to dive a little bit better than that, and so that was disappointing. But then I think for me, Rio was more disappointing because then I had the 4 years to get ready again, and I felt like I was in a much better position in terms of how I was diving and physically and everything in Rio. And I I performed well, but not as well as I wanted to. And I just knew I was capable of getting up in the medals, and I just, wasn't able to do it. And I took that quite hard. And I just remember like the days after my comp, I really struggled in Rio. And I remember there was like this lake in the middle of the village, and I just would do laps of the lake and just cry for days, and just be like, should I keep going? Like, is this really worth it? And it was just that feeling for me. I was like, I don't want to feel like this again. And it took me a few days of laps and tears to be like, okay, so you either don't want to feel like this and you don't do it, or you knuckle down and you don't feel like this again because you're going to do a good job and you're not going to feel like this. So I had to have a pretty hard chat with myself, but I just remember being that feeling. I don't think I'll forget that feeling, like that just deep disappointment in myself, and that I'd let the team around me down and my family and things like that. I took that pretty hard.
So it was just like your own kind of chat with yourself that got you through it, or did your coach kind of convince you to stick with it and keep going?
I think like I spoke with my friend, my teammate Esther a lot. She did laps the first day with me, and I didn't even know if we spoke. She was just kind of there with me, and I think she could really see that I really was struggling with that result that I'd gotten, and she was going to keep diving, and she's kind of like been we've been training together now probably since around 2012 in Swiss and Sydney, and she's such a huge support for me as a teammate. And I think just having her there telling me, like, come on, like, just go for it, you can do this, another 4 years, let's do it, just knuckle down. And I knew that she was going to be there training hard as well, and that was I think a huge help for me. And then pulling myself out of that, and then just being right, we're going to just go for it in the next 4 years.
Yeah, and I was having a look through the stats again, and I think in 2016, like you said, you came fifth, but that would have got you a silver in London. I might be wrong with that, but something like that. And obviously, kind of all sports improve through the years, whatever it is, but diving we're talking about here. So, like, is a perfect dive or a high-scoring dive now, or a high-scoring dive in, 10 years ago when you started, is that lower scoring now than it was then, if you know what I mean?
I think it's really difficult to compare scoring. Like, you can do it on paper, compare scores from 1 year to the next or one Olympics to the next. But I think it's always different when you're there in the moment, and judging and diving is subjective. So, like, at the end of the day, it is in the hands of the judges watching the dives, and sometimes they can go with you and sometimes they can go against you. And I'm pretty fortunate in my career that I've been around for a while, and usually the judges go with me. I think they don't mind my style of diving, which is good. So that's good, but it can be a bit subjective. So it is hard to compare. I think the easiest thing, even like round to round, things change. Usually in a final, they'll, it's a bit more exciting. They'll throw out bigger scores as well. So it's probably like easiest to compare one round of dives, like the divers in that round, but also to DDs. Sometimes they evaluate those and change them over the years. So one of my dives was a higher DD, like back in 2008, than what it is now, because they reevaluated that and changed it. So that affects scores as well between games.
Yeah. Okay. Really, it's really interesting. And hearing you before talking about considering throwing it away, I listened to one of your podcasts in preparation of this, and you touched on that you had a lot of partners and a lot of them retired, even ones younger than you. So it seems like, not saying that's from you, but the question is that, so it seems like diving, a lot of people seem to retire at a young age. People also can compete at a younger age. Did you ever consider throwing it, retiring just through this process, apart from just after the 2016 Olympics?
Yeah, I think that like retiring is really individual in diving. So some people retire young, some people retire when they're older. There's not really like a particular age. I think it just really depends on your personal circumstances. And unfortunately, most of the time it comes down to injuries that force people out of the sport, and they just like physically can't do it anymore. So I think for me, like there have been times where I thought about it for different reasons. I think the earliest one was probably like even back after my first Olympics when I was 17, and I had like a coach that took me when I was a junior to all the way to the Olympics, in that few years, and he basically taught me everything I knew. And then after Olympics, I had to move up to the head coach, and we just really didn't gel well at all. And I just found the environment in general, I was quite unhappy and I wasn't enjoying it. So that's when I decided to move to Sydney. So I moved to Sydney when I was 17, but when I made that decision, I really wanted to quit diving. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I basically thought, I'm going to either quit or do something drastic. So I thought I'll keep doing it, but I'll move to Sydney. And I've been here since with my coach, Charles Sabrino, and I think that was a really good move for me. But then I think like after that, there were still definitely times when I thought about that. There's definitely like my sister, when she passed away, that was a time when it's not necessarily I didn't really think about it in terms of just diving. I just wanted to quit life, to be honest. I didn't know how to like continue on. And I think that was just like a really tough time for my family, and it's still really tough for us now. And I think it will always be really tough. And then probably more like in the last few years with injuries and that kind of thing, I've really questioned whether or not I'll be able to overcome them. And it's not just about being injured, it's just knowing that the injuries stop me from performing my best. And I think that's why I questioned it. Like I'm putting these hours, I'm pushing my body, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And I think just that doubting myself that, if I can't physically do it. But yeah, luckily I have a really good support team, really good physio behind me, so I was able to overcome those injuries. But there's been, over the years, a number of reasons, but I've definitely had those kind of conversations with myself through the years.
Yeah, it's so amazing you telling that story, listing off all those challenges and culminating in the first individual medal at these Olympics. But before we get on to these Olympics, you mentioned the coach. So what does the perfect coach for you look like? Obviously, each person has a different kind of preference for what their coach is like, but what does your ideal coach look like?
So my ideal coach is definitely supportive. I think because I'm quite self-motivated and self-driven, I don't really respond that well to someone like pushing my buttons on purpose and making me feel, not that I need a lot of just fake positive support. I definitely like the criticism and I like to be able to continue improving. But I think if that comes from the right place and it's someone giving me critiques to help me improve rather than like little jabs because I do struggle a lot with self-esteem. And I think when the jabs can be nasty or not with the best intentions, that's something that doesn't work well for me. So I'm pretty easygoing other than that, though, as an athlete. So I think just like a coach who is prepared to put in the work, the same work that I am, works really well. And we kind of feed off each other then, both of us putting, committing everything to achieving their goal. And I think you just have to be on the same page as your coach as well. So if they've got big goals and you've got big goals and you know what you're both working towards, I think that then if you put a plan of action in place to get there is a really good mix.
Yeah, wow. And to be honest, I got chills before listening to you, Mel, just talk about how you dealt with adversity. It's really inspirational and interesting, I guess, your opinions on coaching, because obviously coaches differ from sport to sport. And I guess proof is in the pudding, had an awesome 2020 Olympics. And first of all, I just want to talk about sort of the strategy behind the diving team. So the diving team got there, you were there for about 2.5 weeks. So you got there a lot earlier than other athletes. Can you explain why that was?
So we weren't actually supposed to go in that early. We were supposed to do a camp in Brisbane, and we actually had this whole big plan that Diving Australia did where we had 2 groups. So we had like the springboard group who was going to compete first, and then we had the platform group, and there was a bit of overlap in Brisbane, but then springboard was going to go over there first and then leave first and all that. But basically right before we went away, we had lockdown in Sydney, and then I think like even the other states, so I think Brisbane was in a lockdown as well, so we couldn't even get there to Brisbane, so they basically had to can the camp. And then we in Sydney were getting worried because I think ours was a bit worse than other states, that they were kind of we had people training in the pool, but then gradually it was getting less and less, and they just were closing it off to, first of all it was the younger squads, and then it was only the national squad, and then it was only Olympians training. So towards the end, we were worried that we were like not going to be able to train, or we were going to get stuck here. So they ended up changing our flights, and we went over there earlier than expected, just to basically get out of Sydney. And I think it was cool. We were happy about it because normally you get to spend the whole of Olympics there, but we were already going to have like only a short time. So we were happy to go there early and have more time in Tokyo. So I wasn't actually that mad about it. And it was really challenging, the training before we went away, when our squads like dwindled and there was only a few of us training, and it kind of coincided with winter. It got really cold in the pool. It was quiet and there was like nobody else in the pool. Like there was like maybe a couple of swimmers or something. I actually found that training right before Tokyo really challenging mentally, and I had to really kind of dig deep mentally and be like, "Okay, you're training for Olympics here." But it was like a bit hard to stay motivated in that time. So when we went over there early, I was literally like celebrating.
Yeah, and I saw the diving team for Australia only got like finalised in mid-June, and then you were over there by mid-July. So that turnaround, like barely any time, 1 month. But Lockie's got a question next, I think.
Yeah. So I think you've had your injuries through your career, and it's really interesting. And this is something we ask a lot of our Olympic athletes, but I think for you it rings more true, is that the benefits of the delayed Olympics. Because if the Olympics ran in 2020 as they were planned, is it true that you wouldn't have been able to compete?
I don't actually know. I was quite injured and I wouldn't have done any comps for a whole year. So I was basically trying to get ready for this deadline of Olympic trials, and that was going to be my first comp in a year, and off the back of not much training. So I was quite worried in 2020 that I would have to go into that comp like that. So when the Olympics got postponed, I was actually I was really happy because it gave me time to recover from my injuries properly, not have to rush it, and then on top of that, prepare properly for Olympic trials. And I feel like I ended up being able to get that really solid preparation coming in. I got to do a couple of comps beforehand, not big ones, but enough. I had one really bad comp, so it was really good to get that like out of the way. And that was kind of a bit of a kick up the bum as well for me, which I was glad to have that bad comp. And it just kind of just helped me get everything fine-tuned I needed going into trials. And then, and you mentioned the quick turnaround. That's actually pretty normal in diving. We usually have our trials probably May or June, so they're usually relatively late, but it was kind of good then to be able to just piggyback off that prep for trials going into Olympics, and I was so glad to be able to get that really good prep in.
Yeah, so getting that good prep, you're feeling pretty confident. Are you coming into Tokyo?
Yeah, I was feeling pretty confident, but not overly. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Confident. I always just focus on myself and like compare myself to my own ability. So where I was probably in March of this year to then trials in, I think they're in, when were they, June? I can't even remember now. Basically I feel like I basically didn't want to have any regrets, and I put everything into that prep period, and it was, like I mentioned, had that kick up the bum, and I worked really hard on mindset. I worked really hard on the areas that I knew were weak areas for me, and I felt a lot more confident going into trials about my own ability to be able to perform the way that I wanted to perform. And then I didn't really think about the competition too much. And then I was lucky that I did that and I made the team. But I never based my confidence like on how I'm going to go compared to other people or where I'm going to come. I always just based it on my experience and my previous experience with how I've dived.
Yeah, awesome. And it sounds like you're ripe, you were prepared, and then you went to the Olympics and you obviously first ever individual Olympic medal, bronze. How was it? What was that immense personal satisfaction like, getting that medal? But not only getting the medal, but walking away with a performance that I'm sure that you can be immensely proud of.
It was a pretty special moment for me. I think just sharing that moment with my coach, we've been working together now for it must be like 11 years because of the extra year, because it's 2021. So we've been working together a long time, and I think to get that, I think it was so special to me. That medal was not just that achievement for me, but I've had a really good support team behind me, especially this year or the last few years really going into this comp. And that includes my coach, my family, my physio, dietitian, my strength and conditioning coach. I feel like all the stars kind of aligned for me this year to help me with that prep. And I did get that really good prep in, and that wasn't just on my own. That was a whole team of people helping and supporting me get there. And I think to win that medal was just not just for me, but it was for the whole team. And I was just super, super happy to be able to do that.
Yeah. And so you've got that bronze. Now, what are your plans post-Olympics? I mean, you spoke about a home Commonwealth Games. There's a home Olympics in 2032. Are we going to be seeing Mel Wu dive in 11 years' time at the Olympics?
Look, I don't know about 11 years' time. At this point, I'm just taking a bit of a break. I was telling you guys before, I've got quite a few projects outside of diving and running 3 businesses, and hopefully when things go back to normal, I'll be back coaching again. So I might just enjoy this chance to have a bit of a break, and I've just been staying fit and still exercising. And then when we come out of lockdown, I'll go back and focus on training again. But I haven't really focused too much on the future goals yet. I'm just going to kind of enjoy this time while I last.
Now, a question that we ask as a bit of a final question before we get to our last segment on every show. So obviously every guest that we have has their kind of ups and downs and challenges, adversities, positives and negatives. And to be a bit corny, that kind of shapes who everyone is, really. So the question is, do you have a life philosophy or like a quote or anything like that you live by?
This is a tough question. I don't know. I think I have a quote tattooed on my left rib that says, "Only as much as I dream can I be." And I think that's really important for me, just because I think it's so true. Whatever I dream, whatever I put out there, I can do. But I think usually when I miss the mark or I feel disappointed, I don't do what I want to do, the person that was holding me back from doing that was me. So I think it just is that reminder that if I just open that door for myself and allow myself to feel limitless and to do anything that I want to do, then it's possible.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. And that's an awesome tattoo. It's a bit more inspirational than Harper's Southern Cross tattoo.
Oh, you're patriotic. I love it. Great.
Definitely do not have any kind of tattoo, just for the listeners. And of course, I mentioned that final listening segment that we have. We have it on every episode. It's our favourite segment of the show. Of course, it is the Where Do We Begin quiz. So I'll hit the music. That really gets the shivers going down the spine, that music.
Jeez, I'm inspired.
The last thing that we have always at the end of the show, we do a little quiz, and we've got 5 questions. I'm going to be hosting. Lockie up against Mel. 5 questions, all kind of vaguely related to Mel's life and career, the guest's life and career, in this case, of course, that is you, Mel. So 5 questions. Your name is your buzzer. You ready to go, guys?
I'm always happy to start off my day off a win, so let's get into it, Harps.
Okay, let's go. So, question 1. Now, Mel, I've heard that one of your nicknames is Woodles. So I've got a question about a Woodle. So a Woodle is actually a dog breed, but a Woodle is a cross between which 2 dogs?
Oh, I have no idea. Something in a poodle.
Something in a poodle.
I was about to say Worcestershire sauce and a poodle. That's the only W word I could think of.
I can't think of a breed that starts with W.
I'll tell you, it's a something terrier. A something terrier.
Oh, I don't know.
I've got no idea. Wolf terrier.
Wolf terrier.
Wait, is that a dog?
Incorrect.
I have no idea. You can have this point, Lockie.
I don't think Lockie's got either. Wolf terrier.
No, I've got Wolf terrier was the best one I could go with.
It's a Welsh terrier and a poodle.
Jeez, interesting fact. Do you have any Woodles running around the house, Harps?
No, I don't have any Woodles. I had a look at pretty nice looking dog. Wouldn't mind a Woodle. But move to question 2. Good start, 0-0. So move to question 2. I believe you were born on the 3rd of May, 1992. And I had a look at the Australian charts, the singles charts on the 3rd of May, 1992. Topping the charts was a song called Under the Bridge. Can you tell me which band performs the song Under the Bridge?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea.
Okay, I think this one you kind of
How do you expect us to know this, Harps?
I thought
do we get
some people would know. You kind of know it or you don't, but I'll give you a clue.
Thanks, Mel. Thank you.
The name of the band is something, if you put it in your food, it would make it a lot spicier. 4 words in the name of the band.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Bang. He's got it. Absolutely correct. Very nice, Lockie.
Oh, that was a good guess.
And I wouldn't have known it without that clue, but thank you, Mel. I tell Harper every week that the questions I've got no idea, and he goes, "Oh, geez, everybody I know knows." And I'm like, Harper, are your mates bloody Nobel Prize winners?
I'm so bad.
Like, seriously, how the hell?
You're definitely going to win, Lockie.
I like it. Mel's lowering my defences before she jumps in and destroys it.
Yeah, she'll slide in there on question 5 where she can get the 5-point clue. But we'll move to question 3 first up. So there are a few famous Wus going around. Another famous Wu, not yourself, Mel, but John Woo, W-O-O. He's a director, a Hollywood director. So John Woo directed which sequel starring Tom Cruise? Action sequel starring Tom Cruise.
I don't know. Mission Impossible? Or I don't know.
Sequel.
I don't even know. I'm
tell you
so
that,
bad.
You're getting very close. You're getting very close. Just add a little sequel to
Mission
that.
Impossible 2.
Lockie,
2, yeah.
Lockie,
Mission Impossible 2.
that is very cheap of you, very dirty of you, mate. But he's got it absolutely right. Lockie's got the point. Very nice.
I was like, hang on, was he even in that? I don't even know.
Lockie's gone 3-0 up.
2-0. I didn't get the first question, Harps.
You're smashing it.
yes. Not wrong. 2-0 to Lockie. Yeah, good on you, Lockie. 2-0 up. But you can still come back, Mel. We'll move to question 4. So, of course, your initials, MW. There's another MW Olympian in the most recent Australian Olympic team. So the question is, which Australian swimmer won the 4x100 metre freestyle gold in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics and has the initials MW?
Is it a male or female?
It's a female and won gold in this event in 2016 and 2020.
I've got no idea. Pass. I'll give it to Mel. Mel's best mates with the whole Olympic team, so she'll know
Can
it.
we have a hint?
Of course.
Please? Not a hint?
Okay. I'll try and think of a clue for the last name. Have you seen the movie Cars?
What, Lightning McQueen?
Yeah, like that's the only thing from Cars.
No,
that
not
I know.
Lightning McQueen, but the actor who voices Lightning McQueen. Same last name as the actor who voices Lightning McQueen.
Maddie Wilson?
Meg Wilson.
Mel has got it absolutely correct with Madison Wilson. Very nice. She's brought it back. It's a 3-1.
Yay, I got one.
Give us a fist bump.
Mel, you're actually still in the game. It's question 5, so it's the last question, but a few extra bonus points on offer in this question because, as all frequent listeners to the show will know, it's the Who Am I question. So I'm going to go down from 5 points all the way down to 1 point, give you a series of clues, of course, leading to who I am. So I believe you kicked off your Tokyo campaign in the Olympics on the 4th of August. So that was a very, very significant event here in Australia. But the second most significant event in Australia on the 4th of August was this person celebrating their 32nd birthday. So the 5-point clue is I was born on the 4th of August, 1989 in somewhere in Australia. Long run up to that clue. But I'll move to the 4-point clue for 4 points. When I was 14 years old, I won the inaugural Road to Tamworth competition at the Tamworth Country Music Festival.
I don't know.
I'm not a country music guy, to be honest, Harps. It's Keith Urban, 32.
That would be my best guess.
I'll move to the 3-point clue. Now, Lockie's 2-1 up, so Mel needs to get at least 2 points to take out the quiz. So for the 3-point clue, I won Best Actress in a Supporting Role at the 2012 Actor Awards for my performance in The Sapphires.
Is this a female?
Can't tell you that yet, but do you want to have a guess at who it is?
Wait for the clue, Mel. Come on, can't ask a quiz master questions like that. It compromises the integrity of the competition.
Is it Jessica Malboy? No.
We'll get a bit of a drum roll going to see if it is Jessica Malboy. Jessica Malboy is absolutely correct.
Whoa.
That was meant to be a bit of a sound effect for the winning thing there, but it was all just fuzzy noise. But anyway, congratulations,
That's
Mel.
because the fans wanted me to win, Harbs. That's why he did that one.
They've hacked into my computer. But congratulations, Mel. Awesome win. How are you feeling after that? Awesome comeback.
Oh, thank you. She's awesome, by the way. She's cool. I'm glad I got that one right.
Jeez, congrats, Mel. I'd say the better person won, but I can't lie on the podcast.
Didn't we tie, though? That's a tie, isn't it?
No. You took it out, Mel. You got 3 points at the end there.
Go.
So you won at 4-2.
4-2.
Well, there you go.
Congratulations. And, great battle as always, and thanks so much for coming on the pod, Mel. It was absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Mel. Of course, this is our first episode back. So for all the listeners, we've got heaps more episodes coming out every week, like usual from now. So thanks for tuning in. And thanks again, Mel, for coming on.
Thank you.